You can all see my screen, correct? Yes. Okay. Got thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you guys. So here we have basically the slide we ended on where I said, I don't really care that much that you know what LH does and what FSH does, as long as you understand that these two hormones working together are going to cause the endometrium of the uterus to thicken, to catch an egg, catch an embryo, and also cause ovulation. Okay. If you don't know which causes which one, it's fine. But just like know what they do because that's so important. So here's where I'm pretty certain we left off, which is this corpus luteum, which is what is left over. It used to surround the egg. And after the egg left, the corpus luteum was the cells that were left behind. And the super cool job that it does is to secrete estrogens and progesterone. We took a short little off ramp to say, isn't this so weird or neat or logical that most of your oral contraceptive birth controls use one or both of these hormones to essentially tell the body, hold on, don't have a period, there could be a baby on the way for years. And that's noteworthy and kind of neat. And so that's what the corpus luteum does naturally. Estrogens cause the uterus lining to thicken up to catch the kiddo. Progesterone causes more blood vasculature, more capillary growth in that lining to, again, give blood supply to that kiddo as soon as it lands, if you will. And both those hormones stop FSH and LH secretion from the anterior pituitary because we do not want the anterior pituitary to stimulate ovulation again. Now is a terrible time to ovulate. Pause. See if there is a kiddo there. Give it a period of days. If there is no kiddo there, flush the lining in what's called menses or a period, start to thicken up the lining again, then let LH and FSH go ahead and be secreted, and let's ovulate again and repeat this whole cycle all over again. So that's what the corpus luteum does. It's cool. The corpus luteum and the corpus albicans, which is basically the degrading luteum, are making sure that this cycle is, how should we say this? Coordinated correctly, synced up correctly, that things are happening when they should be happening, which is pretty cool. So let's say the egg is not fertilized. In this example, there's no pregnancy. Sorry, there's a chat box message. I'm slow with this. I apologize. Does the prolonged time of estrogen and or progesterone cause any damage to the body? Jake, I am not qualified to answer that question, but it's a great question. Such a good question. I don't know, sir. That's a great question. I'm just going to say that. Talk to an OB. Find an OB. We all needs waffles. Indeed. Okay. So I don't know what that means, but there you have it. So Jake, I don't know. Let's say this. People have different opinions on it. I don't know if we've had large control group peer-reviewed studies done on long-term birth control use compared to, basically any sort of related to disease or, issues with having children later, or how long it takes for cycles to start up normally. I don't know, but it's interesting. It makes a guy wonder, right? Cause it's that's a long time to be telling your body not to ovulate. Can you do that for a decade? Is that cool? I don't know. That's a great question for an OB. And, I've wondered the same thing, to be completely honest, and I think it's worth wondering. So anyways, corpus luteum degenerates. Estrogen and progesterones are no longer being secreted. So we say, hey, LH and FSH, if you want to go ahead and ovulate again, that's fine, because we're going to go ahead and get rid of this lining and we're going to start to regrow it. So the coolest graph, in my opinion, short only of perhaps where blood cells are formed in your lifetime, is this graph right here, because it is everything you've ever wondered explained, and I think it is so neat. So at any rate, here you have everything you've ever needed to know about the whole cycle in one picture. And if you get this graph, you're sharper than the average bear. Okay, so the top graph is completely blocked by my Zoom meeting bar, but that's okay, because what you need to look at is down here. Okay, so guys and gals already know this. Guys, you may or may not know this. Here's the deal. A period is not a one-day event, okay? We must start this clock somewhere. but menses is going to take a period of days. There's going to be variation in here, but your total time of, bleeding, of the endometrium coming outside of the body is probably, I don't know, between friends, it's going to be between, like, I don't know, 3 to 6 days, 4 to 7 days. I hope this is not a multiple week process for you. That would be not fun. So this is day 0. Day 0 is the very first day that menses starts. The first day that a woman starts to bleed, that's day 0, okay? So over this period of days, let's say between friends, let's just say it's 5 days. I don't know, we're gonna pick a number because we need to. So over the period of 5 days, this is the thickness, the relative thickness of the endometrium. And this little red squirrely do is supposed to represent capillary beds and vasculature, right? And so over this period of 5 days, this woman's going through menses or her period, and she's bleeding daily, and that's the endometrium sloughing off and coming out of the body, okay? So that's 5 days. So we're going to kind of follow this. At this point, we're going to basically just simplify this to say estrogen and progesterone, okay? Estrogen and progesterone are low here, okay? That's during the period. Your LH and FSH coming out of your pituitary gland, which is going to regulate ovulation, are also very low. Don't ovulate when you're having a period. That doesn't make any sense. Now, here's the neat part. Here you can see the follicle, ovulation, corpus luteum maintaining it, and corpus albicans degrading. But look at this. This is cool. This is body temperature, okay? So this gal's running at 36 Celsius. She stays at 36 Celsius, relatively, a normal body temperature. This is 98, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is a fascinating thing. I think you're going to enjoy this. So we go to day 5. The period is done. The bleeding is done. The cramping is done. She's like, thank goodness. I get a break from that obnoxious time period, okay? Now, at day 5, estrogen and progesterone start to take off. Now, as estrogen takes off, the uterine lining gets thicker because that's what estrogen does. If you don't commit that to memory, you're going to be fine. But as estrogen takes off, around day 14, ballpark with me here. If you're not hitting 28 days to the day, welcome to the rest of the functioning world. That's fine. Okay. Around day 14, LH and FSH are going to hit their max. LH and FSH are taken off at, like, let's say day 12, okay? LH and FSH take off at day 12. They're in the bloodstream. Day 13, the ovary's flooded with them, and it's like, go for primary follicles. Go become eggs. Let's ovulate. Now, at the same time, this uterine lining is getting thicker and thicker and thicker. Does that kind of make sense down here? So this gal ovulates at day 14. This egg is emitted from the ovary. Now, it's going to take a while for that egg to float down the uterine tube or the fallopian tube. After she ovulates, LH and FSH, which cause the ovulation, tank. No duh. You just ovulated. You don't need LH and FSH anymore. They caused you to ovulate. The egg needs time, okay? Progesterone stays high. Estrogen stays relatively high. And this uterine lining gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Now, in the couple of days it takes for the egg to make its trip down the fallopian tube, by the time it hits the uterus, this thing is about as thick as it's going to get. I mean, it's a really thick uterine lining. And the body temperature is still relatively high. The corpus luteum is maintaining the thickness of this endometrium. Progesterone is also maintaining the thickness of this endometrium because it's being produced by the corpus luteum. This is the phase that, they call it luteal, but for you and I, we're just going to say, hold on, there could be a kid on the way. Might be an egg, might be a kid, we don't know. Hang on, don't go anywhere, there could be a kid on the way. This thickness is maintained, which gives the egg abundant time to implant, okay? If nothing's implanted at this day 25, 26, that thing was ovulated at 14. If it was going to get there, it would have got there by now, okay? It's not an embryo 7 days later, obviously. So then what happens? The corpus luteum degrades into corpus albicans. It stops producing progesterone. Progesterone tanks. This gal's body temperature tanks. And you guessed it, she starts her period. That's day 28 or day 0. Call it whatever you like. And then you are back at the beginning of this graph. And the whole thing repeats itself. And that's how hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, ovaries, estrogen, progesterone, and corpus albicans all regulate a reproductive cycle in a female. That's it. Now, here's the cool thing, which this is a little, it's not really off topic. It's a tiny bit off topic. This is the cool thing that like some genius figured out a few years ago, that you guys get the benefit of technology that the older folks didn't have. Do what you will with this information, okay? Many years from now, when you're married, after you're married, and you're planning this kind of stuff out, you might want to like kind of, have a plan in place. Like, you want to start having kids like day 1 after marriage, or do you want to like give it a year? Okay, somebody came up with this idea, which I think is genius, where they made a thermometer, your standard oral thermometer that goes to like the 100th place, and linked it with an app on this phone, okay? Any standard phone. And this girl can take her temperature every day at the same time, and it automatically logs her temperature. John, I see your hand. I'm going to get you in 1 second. And it logs it on the app. And obviously what it's tracking, where's my pen? Pen, come back to me. I want to draw on this. What it's tracking is this right here. So every day she's up at 7 a.m. to go to work. Takes temperature, log on the app. Takes temperature, log on the app. Takes temperature, log on the app. Right? So when her temperature goes up 0.5 degree or 1.5 degrees, it's logged on the app. And if she's taking her temperature every day at the same time, odds are pretty good you just dialed in when ovulation was. So if you're trying to not have kiddos yet, that's the time to not be having sex. If it's like, let's have lots of kiddos, that's your day. And it's super cool because it's like, there's no drugs involved. There's no expensive like pills involved. Like, you're just literally taking your temperature every morning. And I was like, man, that's kind of neat. So that's a little bit off topic, but not that off topic. I think that's pretty neat. So use that information as you will. Okay, John Vankis, you had your hand up for a while and you were like waving at me and I ignored you. I'm sorry, sir. What's your question?
Oh, no, that's what I was going to say. Are you basically saying that they're timing their time? Ovulation?
Ovulation is the time for pregnancy. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Day 14 is the day where conception will occur. But bear in mind that there's a window of days around that, right? Because if an egg takes a few days to get down a fallopian tube and sperm can live 3 to 5 days in a fallopian tube, then a person could potentially hit a few day window around that day and still, have bouncing baby boys and girls in 9 months, So yeah, however you want to use that information. But there's 14 days. That's if they're on a 28-day regular cycle. If. That's a big if. Okay, so there you have that. Okay, oh shoot, I should ask this. Any questions about the world's coolest graph? Go once, go twice, or shaking your head.
I've got a question. My hand's been up.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Grace. What's up?
Okay. So why is it that girls' periods like sync up when they're around each other?
Oh my goodness. Free high five for the best question of the day. Okay, here's the deal. This is such a good question. I love this question. Okay. Insects will release pheromones. Other animals will release pheromones. And it lets other animals of the same species know that it's the time to reproduce. And other animals can smell this. And there's a variety of different responses from, claiming territories, attracting mates, fighting off other of their kind, etc., etc. It's well documented in insects. Humans, much to perfume makers' sadness, have no evidences of ever secreting or producing any pheromones to ever attract a mate. That's like the holy grail of the deodorant world, right? We don't have that. Except the only evidence we have for chemical communication for reproduction among humans is consistent cycling in females. And nobody knows why. That's the honest answer. We don't know. but it is well documented that like girls who share a dorm room, right? They're around each other 9 hours a day. They will sync up their cycle so that they will be having a period within a day or two, sometimes the same day as their roommate. And that happens. It happens within families to some extent with athletic teams when they're traveling together and they're together all the time. And the honest answer is nobody knows why, unless there's been huge progress in that in like the last 3 years. No one knows. So I'm so sorry that I couldn't give you a better answer to that, Grace, because it's an awesome question. But yeah, nobody knows. Is this graph going to be on the test? No, it is not. It's so cool. No, it's not going to be on the test. Just your standard, penis, testes, and uterus are going to be on the test. The simple stuff, epididymis and ovaries and that kind of stuff. Not this diagram. This diagram is more like just to help you understand more or less how it's regulated throughout the 28 days. Okay, any other questions? Good questions all the way around, by the way. Done like the whole class period on this graph. I'm so sorry. It's 24. I can't believe it. Oh, okay. At any rate, at some point in every woman's life, they will go through menopause. This is the end of the reproductive life, okay? Reproductive life is going to run puberty through menopause. Puberty, they start producing and ovulating eggs. Menopause, they stop producing and ovulating eggs, okay? It's going to vary from person to person. Sometime in the 40s or 50s, they're going to stop having reproductive cycles. The bright side of this is there's no more periods. The downside to this is there's a lot less estrogen and progesterone, which do their own jobs in regulating a variety of other things that are beneficial, like metabolism, bone density. There's some other things off the top of my head. I can't quite rattle them all off, but they regulate a lot. Let's just say that, okay? And so those are going to stop. When you get to the point where you see mom or aunt standing outside in the snow barefoot, menopause is knocking on the door because they get hot flashes and they really, are not regulating hormones well, and they get super, super hot for whatever reason, and off to stand in the snow they go, which I always thought was quite interesting. So anyways, ovaries are no longer producing much estrogen or progesterone. No duh. You're not ovulating anymore. Some females might diminish secondary sex characteristics. Again, sure, you're having less estrogen. Not something you need to commit to memory. If you know that menopause is the end of reproductive cycles, I'm content with that. A little less energy, fatigue, sure. Hot flashes, yes. Can you, if you wanted to have hormone therapy and get more estrogen to maintain bone density, could you? I'm not a doctor. Probably, yes. But if your body's estrogen is normally declining, then I don't know. Whatever. Do what you will with that information. But that's menopause. Eventually, they'll stop ovulating. And when they stop ovulating, no periods, menopause. Some interesting things. I don't know how necessarily important they are to commit to memory. Menarche, super weird word. It sounds like anarchy, doesn't it? Anyways, menarche is the first menstrual cycle, which is the very first period a girl will ever get, which isn't actually true. It's the first ovulation, and then the period has to come after that, but whatever. That's the first one. Some cool ones, which I think is interesting. Oligomenorrhea. Okay, fun to say, fun to sell, fun to say, fun to spell, worth 1 million Scrabble points. Oligomenorrhea. I don't know how this is regulated. I would lie if I said I was anywhere near that smart. But basically, guys, you're out on this one. Sorry. Ladies, your body knows when it's in good shape to have a child. It's really cool. If you are, should I say this going on YouTube? I'm going to go for it. If you are like very, very, very obese, not a little heavy, but very obese, you will probably have diminished cycles per year or potentially stop ovulating. It can be very difficult to get pregnant if you're very, very, very obese because your body knows, should I say this? I think I'm going to, that basically you're not in a good environmental or physical shape to birth and have and care for a child. Okay, I'm sorry. I hope I don't get people angry at me. On the converse side of that, if you are training to be an Olympic distance runner and you run 10 miles a day, you will probably have very few or no periods ever during your training because your body knows that environmentally and physically you are not in a good shape to have a child right now. That's not because you're not physically fit. You're more physically fit than 99% of the world's population. But if your environment requires you to be running 10 miles a day, it's probably not a good time to be pregnant and to give birth. Does that kind of make sense? It's weird, right? It's so weird, but it's cool. So like, you can kind of think like almost naturally, you're like, well, that makes sense. If you were running every day, maybe it's like a kind of a social unrest, war kind of thing, and your body would not be ovulating and getting pregnant when you're under the severe environmental stress. So essentially, when you're healthy and well fed and in okay shape, but not running 15 miles a day and not super 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 obese, you'll have regular cycles and like regular-ish. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It's really cool. Like wow. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, so we have few and light periods. No duh. Stress could cause you to stop ovulating at times, sure, or to slow ovulation. Poor nutrition. If you're starving, your body knows now's not a good time to get pregnant. We are starving. Distance running, like real distance running, more than the couple mile jog that I might survive. And then, if you take that one step further, there's A is without, right? So amenorrhea, menses is a period. Amenorrhea is the complete absence of a period. No periods, no ovulation. So you completely stop menstrual flow. There's lots of things that can cause this. Drastic weight loss. So again, your body kind of knows. Obesity, which is the other end of that spectrum, obviously. If you are very, 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 very ill, that can cause that as well. So completely stopping a reproductive cycle. So again, I'm not smart enough to know how your body knows to shut these systems down, slow them down, or shut them completely down under severe environmental stress, but it does. So like, that's pretty cool, right? I don't know. Anyways, I think it's interesting. Dang, it is 9:30. I'm so grumpy now. Okay, well, I'm not that grumpy. We made it through like the world's coolest graph, and that was the class. Ugh. All right, well, I guess that's what we're gonna have to do, guys. We're gonna call it. We'll finish up notes tomorrow. Tomorrow's really simple. It's like not nearly as complicated. Reproductive physiology was the complicated part. Tomorrow's the easy stuff. We're like finishing up the chapter, clinical applications, and we're done. It's not a big deal. So I will post the crash course video for female reproduction today. Watch it when you want to watch it. Today, night before the test, after the test, I don't care. But it's an additional visual and another description of that. So what are your questions for me before we call it?
Is there a quiz for this part too?
A quiz? Oh, like how I did a quiz as like a homework assignment grade. I'm going to say no, only because I feel like since we're doing a Zoom meeting every day, we're hitting our half-hour time, and if I do a crash course video on top of that, you're over your half-hour time. So even though it's not like a huge time drain, I think I will put it on there for you to watch, but no quiz, no homework grade. So if you decide to skip it, you're still getting your half-hour of instruction per day, and so no quiz on this one. Great question. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Pretty quiet on that end of things. Okie dokie, guys. Well,